All right, welcome. Today we're tackling a big one: how to answer a big question scientifically. Ever wonder how we really know what's true? How we separate solid facts from, well, just fiction? We're about to break down the exact toolkit used to get reliable answers to pretty much any question you can think of. Let's get into it.
I mean, really think about it for a second. How do we know what we know? When a new vaccine is announced or a new phone comes out, how do we get answers we can actually trust? It's not magic, and it's definitely not just guesswork. There's a real structured process behind it all, and that's exactly what we're going to walk through together.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this little research journey. First, we're going to start with a question. Then we'll choose your blueprint, gather your evidence, and connect the dots. And finally, we'll ask the big one: what makes research good? Think of it as a step-by-step trip from a simple huh to a solid aha. All right, section 1, start with a question. This is the spark of inquiry. And it's funny. Every single major discovery, every new invention, every reliable answer we have, it all starts in the exact same place, with a simple question. Because look, before you can even think about finding an answer, you have to know what you're asking. Defining that research problem, it's kind of like plugging a destination into your GPS. Without it, you're just driving around, gathering all sorts of random data that doesn't lead anywhere. This gives you a clear direction, a real focus. So, once you've got that problem locked down, you form what's called a hypothesis. And really, all that is a clear, testable prediction about what you think you're going to find. It's like your best educated guess, a provisional idea that acts like a flashlight in the dark, pointing you right where you need to look. Okay, so how do you actually build one of these? Well, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Step 1, it usually just starts with an experience, something you notice in your daily life. Then step 2, you define your variables. These are just the specific things you want to study, like, say, the price of a product and how happy customers are with it. And finally, step 3, you form a proposition. You just state a clear relationship between them, like, if we lower the price, customer satisfaction will go up. And boom, just like that, you have something you can actually go out and test. Okay, section 2, choose your blueprint. So you've got your question, you've got your educated guess. What's next? Well, you need a plan of attack. And in the world of research, we call that the research design. It's basically the essential blueprint for how you're going to find your answer. And the kind of blueprint you choose really depends on your question. If you're venturing into the great unknown, exploring a problem that's still pretty fuzzy, you'd use exploratory research. Think of a doctor's first exam with a patient. They're just trying to figure out what's going on. But if your goal is more about painting a really detailed picture of something, you'd use descriptive research. That's like figuring out the exact age breakdown of your customers or what their opinions are in a certain issue.
And yeah, there are a bunch of different blueprints to choose from. For example, if you want to know if one thing actually causes another, an experimental design is your go-to. If you're trying to piece together the past, well, that's historical research. And if you just need to know what a whole bunch of people think right now, you use a survey. See? Each one is like a different tool for a very specific job.
Now for section 3, gather your evidence. Okay, you've got your plan. Now comes the fun part, the active part, the expedition for data. This is where you actually go out and start collecting the raw materials you'll need to build your answer. So what are we talking about when we say data? It's really just the facts, the figures, all the relevant stuff that becomes the foundation for your whole study. It's the bedrock. Without it, you're not doing research, you're just guessing. Now, data basically comes in 2 main flavors. First, you've got primary data. This is the stuff you go out and collect yourself for the very first time. It's totally original. Then there's secondary data. This is data that someone else has already collected. Think public reports, other studies, that kind of thing. So you've got this classic trade-off. Primary data is custom fit for your question, but can be expensive and slow, while secondary data is quick and cheap, but might not be the perfect match. And if you do decide to collect your own data, there are a few tried and true methods. You could use observation, literally just watching and listening, like seeing how customers behave in a store. Or you could do an interview to get really in-depth info about what people think and believe. And of course, there's the classic questionnaire or survey, perfect for getting specific answers from a whole lot of people at once. Okay, let's move on to section 4, connect the dots. So, your expedition was a success. You're back with piles of data. But here's the thing, raw numbers and notes aren't the final answer. Not even close. Now, you've got to turn all that raw data into a real revelation.
It's time to connect the dots and find the story that's hidden inside. And this isn't just a messy free-for-all. There's a clear path from data to insight. Step 1 is editing. You go through the raw data, find any errors, and clean it all up. Step 2 is coding, which is just assigning symbols or numbers to answers so you can group them. Next, in step 3, you classify everything, arranging the data into groups that share common traits. And finally, step 4, tabulation. That's when you summarize it all in neat tables so you can actually analyze it. And that last step, tabulation, is where the magic happens. Look at this. Suddenly, a boring spreadsheet full of numbers becomes a simple bar chart, like this one on product feature satisfaction. And the insight is immediate. You can see right away that feature B, at 80%, is the clear favorite. That's the whole point of this process, turning a mess of complexity into crystal clear insight. So really, the main takeaway here is that all of that work, the editing, the coding, the classifying, it all has just one single goal: to summarize all that data you collected in a way that directly answers your original research question. It's what brings the whole journey right back to the beginning, full circle. So that brings us to our final section. What makes research good? We've walked through the whole process, but what's the difference between research you can actually trust and, well, junk science? This is the ultimate litmus test for credibility. When you get right down to it, what makes research good really comes down to the person doing it. A good researcher has a scientific attitude. They're objective, they're unbiased, they have deep knowledge of what they're studying. They report their findings with complete honesty, even the flaws. And maybe most importantly, their conclusions are only based on what the data actually justifies. Nothing more. This quote from Bertrand Russell really nails it. He said, "The kernel of the scientific outlook is the refusal to regard our own desires, tastes, and interests as affording a key to the understanding of the world." What he's saying is, the core of this whole thing is not letting what you want to be true get in the way of what is true. It's about setting your ego aside. And there you have it. That's the basic framework, the journey from a simple question to a credible conclusion. So now that you know the path, what question about your world would you want to answer?